What are we whispering about?
I had this vision of producing this giant oak table as a place of gathering, a place of connecting in nature, a place of enchantment, a table of dreams. And it had to be oak, because, of course it did, because oak is so rooted in British folklore. And then I thought, oh, well, how's that going to happen then? So I had every sawmill in Devon on a search. It took over a year to find the tree. And then we heard about this legendary oak tree. But the only disadvantage was it was thousands and thousands of pounds, which I didn't actually have. And then literally a friend I didn't really know well, hadn't seen her for years, but always texted her on her birthday. She rang up out of the blue. And it was, oh, hello, how are you? Oh, lovely to hear from you, la la la. And she asked me how I was. I said, I've got this dream. I want to make the longest table on earth, fashioned from a single English oak tree. And I said, I found the tree, I just can't buy it. She actually said, how much do you need? Wow. So within 3 days, we had the money to buy the tree.
In the air, by the sea, from the land, and within you and me. Fairies are whispering. Have you been coloured, confused, completely captivated, and craving clarity? This is Claire Casely, and I am a fairy whisperer. To catch a whisper, you have to listen closely. Listen with me. Hello and welcome. A friend of the podcast recently said to me that my podcast has immediacy and a sense of being in the moment. And this is exactly what the Fae like and what they resonate with. He went on to say, I don't think most people realise that your podcast is also a form of enchantment that draws the Fae to both you and your listeners. After podcasting for over 2 years and talking to many people about fairies, I've come to feel that this is indeed a truth. The amount of interesting synchronicities that have happened between guests from episode to episode, strange occurrences during episodes such as recording of unexpected voices on the track when no one else is around, strange lights appearing on videos when I've recorded video chats with guests, and beautiful connections with people and friendships with people that have grown from this podcast. So it does feel like a form of enchantment. And I started the podcast because of my own connection with fairies and experiences with them. I was beginning to draw more and more people to me that had had fairy experiences, and I really wanted to share their stories with the wider world. Not everyone wants to speak about their otherworldly experiences, so it's a real privilege when people step forward and trust me to be the one that's helping them to get their story out there. My guest for this episode is one of the people that has inspired me to keep following the fairy path. She first came into my awareness through a film that was made by a Canadian documentary maker called John Walker, and the film was called The Fairy Faith. I heard her playing her harp and I was entranced. My guest is Elizabeth Jane Baldry, who prefers to be called EJ, and I've included a couple of her beautiful harp tracks in the episode. One of them is called In Fairyland, and the other is called A Fairy Legend. My children and I met with EJ at the beginning of August, and she gave us a tour of Pidwidgeon Wood, which is a woodland that she purchased about 20 years ago, and now her project has an exciting development because she is creating the longest oak table in the world that's made from a single piece of oak. And EJ has a crowdfunder that you can support for the creation of her table, and I will put the link for this in description for this episode and on my blog. And I hope you enjoy what I've created for you and that you have a sense of the place through this episode. If you'd like to contact the podcast and be a guest or suggest a guest, then please contact me, clairefairy.whisperer@gmail.com, or you can find Fairy Whispering Podcast on Instagram and also Facebook. I have a lovely community on Facebook which is called the Fairy Whispering Circle, which you're welcome to join if you feel a connection to fairies and want to connect with other people that are connected to fairies as well. Enjoy this episode. I think you'll feel inspired and moved. Here with my daughter Ava and my son Ethan. We will come to meet Elizabeth Jane Baldry, who prefers to be called EJ.
Less of a mouthful.
We're standing in front of this amazing rowan tree, which is full of orange berries.
It's very beautiful, and it's just fortuitous that there's a rowan tree by the gate because it's such a tree of protection.
Yes.
We are now at the gate, the entrance to Pigwiggan Wood in northeast Dartmoor, and I always like to ask permission of the woodland spirits before I open the gate, just in case they don't want to see us today. They could be up to all sorts of mischief. So let's just say hello. So hello, can we come in? And the lawnmower starts up, so that was definitely a joke from Fairy, so that probably counts. So here we go, welcome to Pigwiggan Wood. I had always dreamed of owning my own little bit of woodland. And then this patch came up for auction. It was within walking distance of my home, which is just fantastic, and it was simply a neglected field that had been planted with a Forestry Commission grant, and the trees had just been put in willy-nilly, exactly as they just picked them off the back of their tree sack or however the trees were delivered. So when I bought it, it was simply a nettle strewn field with little green poles in, and there was a little bit of tree peeping out the top of each green pole, and those woodland tree cylinders, and little trees were just peeping out saying hello. And I walked in and I thought, oh, this is not really count as a woodland. But then I walked on further up the valley, and it narrows further up, and then it opens out into this incredible hidden valley, which is just beautiful. As soon as I walked into that bit, I thought, yeah, okay, I want this. This is calling to me. But what was so interesting, what has been the most amazing thing over the 18 years that I've owned this wood, is seeing these trees growing up and it actually becoming a young woodland. And every single year it's different. So yeah, it was just a very exciting thing. The auction, the cost cleaned out all my life savings, and then actually it went a little bit more over my bank account. But my kids were with me and they said, we'll help mum. So actually they stumped up some Christmas money from their granny to just get us over the line. So it was just really amazing. It's the best thing I have ever done. I am so lucky to have this woodland.
Lead the way. I'm going to keep recording as we go through.
Okay, so we walk along here. Then round we go, round to the right. So you'll shortly get a glimpse of my extraordinary table project, which is going to be the longest table in the world fashioned from a single English oak tree, a Devon oak tree. But you will, we'll talk about that in a minute. But when it's all finished, there will be an entrance, a little path that will wind through those two rowan trees, so that you come through and there will be an archway and you'll just look straight through and see the vista of the table in one huge line ahead of you.
Look at that, it's amazing.
Yes, it's coming together really well. And so this legendary oak tree was, the trunk was cut into 4 huge slabs, each of which weighs over a ton, and they will be positioned end to end. Then there's these incredible legs, which are all X-shaped, and they're all from the same tree. And then we've got the benches, which are mirror images of the main tree, and even the legs of the benches come from the same glorious oak. So at the end, if you look along, there will be a throne at the end for the spirits of the wood. And then all this has got to be levelled off, sanded. There's still quite a bit of work to go, but we've been working very hard to make this happen.
So EJ, for people listening, could you just describe the scene that we're looking at?
Yes. So we're now in an avenue of young oak trees. They're 20 years old, adolescents, and the table runs straight down the middle of this avenue, and it is almost 60 foot long. It's about 18 metres. It will seat at least 60 people, possibly 80 if we all cozied up. So we've got a little outdoor kitchen here, which is still a work in progress. That's going to be where we can cook for the people who come here. And it's not a commercial thing at all. It will be something where if it's a sunny day, we can say the table is open. It won't be something that will be used often because my top priority is to the trees. So it's not like opening public park where there's going to be people walking around all the time and scaring the fairies off. It needs to keep its sense of sanctuary, but at the same time, I want to share it.
That's so beautiful. Oh, wonderful. A wonderful project. Yes. And the trees that are surrounding us, EJ, were they here when you bought the wood? Or?
Yes, these are all the trees that were in those little tiny green tree poles.
Right.
Now 20 years old. So the green poles have long gone and the trees are all coming into their own. So there's also these amazing bending silver birch trees where we've got that fire pit, and they happened by accident. So in 2007, when the trees were 3 years old, there was a terrific summer storm, and I walked down the following morning and I literally thought the wood had been vandalised because so many trees had been blown down, even though there was only about a foot, 12 inches or so above each green pole of tree. But because it was in summer leaf, it was still enough to catch the wind, and some of the trees died, but the silver birches survived, and look, they've grown all wiggly and amazing.
Yes.
So that's a very magical little spot to sit there with a fire and just listen to the owls.
Wow. We've come here because, of course, there are fairies. EJ, you have a connection with fairies through your amazing harp music and this woodland. I think you've had a connection since childhood, is that right?
Yes, I have. Yes, so I used to see fairies all the time when I was a child, but I saw my last magical being when it's a physical thing when I was about 18. But I sense them now, and there's a wonderful spirit in this wood. I know that it's not just my imagination. For example, there was one time when I walked into the wood and it felt unsettled. I just thought, hello, what's been going on here? And when I tuned in to the oak trees, look, they're remembering, they're just starting to rustle with this story. I realised they were frightened. I thought, what is that all about? Why are they frightened? So I reassured them all is well. And can you feel that? There's a little presence just seem to come through.
Just rippling
Yeah.
through.
And then I found out that day there was a huge mature oak tree, not related to these trees, just an oak tree, but they wouldn't have been acorns that had grown from that tree. But nevertheless, that huge oak tree, which is about half a mile along the lane, was part of a housing development up in the edge of Chagford. And the tree is there, but what the developers did was they sliced down about 6 foot, really deep, maybe 9 foot, all around the tree, sliced down the roots and chopped it all out of the way so that they could just do their building without tree roots in the way of the drains and building things and foundations. Well, amazingly, that tree survived, but it must have been terrified.
Yes.
Because it was having this appalling desecration and violation of its roots. And I didn't know that when I walked into the wood that day. And my oak trees just knew. It was a strange thing. That made me believe more that it's not just imagination. That there really is another, just the other side of the air. There is this other world that's just there. It's like the warp and the weft of the world that the spirit runs right through our physical world, but it's just as real.
I can so relate to what you're saying. I mean, it's happening everywhere, isn't it? This ongoing development that's happening and the green spaces that are disappearing. In Newton Abbot, there's a huge amount going on.
Newton Abbot is really being...
What was that?
Don't know. Didn't hear anything.
Did you knock then?
No.
There was
Didn't
three
hear a
knocks. There was
really?
three knocks.
I didn't hear that.
Went
Ooh.
just as I was talking about that. It was behind me.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I had supper here on Saturday with some friends, and one of them afterwards says there was a whole row of fairies watching during supper.
Oh, there's people.
Oh, could be people.
There's people. I just heard
Probably
someone
could be
laughing.
people walking down the lane.
Maybe, yeah, I just heard someone laughing when you said
Oh, yeah.
fairies.
We've got neighbours on either side of this bit of the wood.
Okay.
Not fairies then. Yes, so I was having supper here, 14 friends, really extraordinary group of people. There was a World Fantasy Award winner, an Oscar winner, a BAFTA winner, various amazing artists, and but one of them said that there was a whole string of fairies watching us. I didn't see them, I was too busy drinking wine.
I'm just interested in Ava and Ethan. What do you feel here? Do you sense anything?
Just feels very nice here. Calming.
Calming.
Yeah, it's very relaxed.
Relaxing, yeah. It feels very, very peaceful, but it feels like we're being listened to
Yes.
very closely.
It's there's more and more presence here every year, and I find it really fascinating. It's changing all the time, and I'm very interested in the idea of re-enchantment. How do you bring the magic back into the landscape? It's only in very recent history that we have found ourselves living in a world that doesn't acknowledge the forces of nature and the magic of nature. I think that it's time for that to come back again, because if there is any hope for the world and all the ecological challenges that we face, we have to rebuild that spiritual connection with nature. I really care deeply about that, and I think, how can you do that in a secular world? How can you re-enchant in a way that doesn't make people think you're a total nutter? How do you do that? And I think gathering people in nature, creating a magical space like this table will be, something that makes people feel wonder is part of it. I believe that we shouldn't be teaching very young children about climate crisis at the moment when they're very young. It just causes anxiety. I don't know how you two guys feel. The anxiety of the climate. Does it worry you?
A bit, yeah.
What I feel we need to be doing is teaching our children to find wonder and magic in nature. You can't ask them to save the world until they've learnt to love it. And we're so detached from nature now as a society. But it was never the case. Every little valley had its land spirit, every waterfall, every little well, every tree even developed its own consciousness over time. How do you do that? How do you make it palatable to a secular society? So that's what I'm experimenting with, but I do know that you can bring magic back into the land. And some of the old ways of managing land have a lot to teach us. So it was always a tradition that when you had a bit of land that was going to become a home, you would circumnavigate the whole patch. Or like we beat the bounds in England, you go round with a birch or a hazel twig or a branch, and you just pace the boundaries. And I do that here at the spring equinox when the undergrowth is still died down. You can get all around the edges. They go all the way round, up, round through the valley at the top. And there's some amazing temperate rainforest there, which is one of the rarest habitats on Earth. And that's forest that is wet and warm enough all year round to have a particular ecosystem. So that's further up the valley.
Yes, so shall we go and explore?
Yes, of course. This is Wood Bethany, and every year there's more and more different and interesting wild flowers here. We wait till the end of the season to cut back everything that's there, and then in the spring it's just an absolute glory of wild flowers and buttercups. But the Bethany is lovely. It just flowers a little later in the year. It's a very magical little plant. Was highly valued by the medieval herbalists.
Wow. And I can see, actually, EJ, looking through the trees, I tend to see anthropomorphic shapes and faces on trees. And I can see lots of tree faces looking out of the moss.
Yeah, see, that one's quite a bit of a character.
Yeah. That one's got horns, actually.
I know. And this one, so they've suffered from some squirrel damage.
Oh,
The squirrels are not pretty little squirrel nutkins. The grey squirrels in England are a non-native invasive species, and what they do is they strip off the bark and to suck at the sugar behind the bark, and then everything above that dies. So you can see there we've had to saw off the main trunk. So the trees end up becoming crazy shapes, some of them. I'm just very glad that this one had some bad squirrel damage earlier in the year, but it looks as if it survived that.
it does. It looks quite happy, that
Yes,
one.
and I was so saddened by it, because this young oak is the one right at the end of the table. So it's the one you see when
Yes.
you'll enter. And then there's going to be a great throne where Ava is here, just there. And that throne has been designed by a friend of mine who actually designed the Lord of the Rings films. So it will feel a little like coming into Middle Earth when you come in. And the throne will be still just for the spirits of the wood. Hardly ever sat in by humans, but just to remind us all. I know, it's so exciting. Anyway, we've got to raise the funds for that somehow, and the whole table, as I say, has got to be sanded and cleaned up and such like.
Because you were sharing about your crowdfunder, which by the time this goes out, that will be happening. So
Yes.
do you want to share a little bit about that so people know?
Yes, absolutely. So I had this vision of producing this giant oak table as a place of gathering, a place of connecting in nature, a place of enchantment, a table of dreams. And it had to be oak, because, of course it did, because oak is so rooted in British folklore. And then I thought, oh, well, how's that going to happen then? So I had every sawmill in Devon on a search. It took over a year to find the tree. And then we heard about this legendary oak tree from the Huntsham estate in mid-Devon. And what made it so unusual is that it had a very long stretch before the trunk divided. Older oak trees tend to have a shorter stretch of trunk. So it was a really unusual tree, and it fell in a storm about 15 years ago, and its owner would not sell it because she said this is the kind of tree that comes along only once in a lifetime, and it's just got to go for something special. So I heard about this tree, so off I went and blagged my way to this lovely, wonderful old woman to sell me her tree. But the only disadvantage was it was thousands and thousands of pounds, which I didn't actually have. And I thought, well, never mind. So I said yes. And then literally a friend I didn't really know well, hadn't seen her for years, but always texted her on her birthday. She rang up out of the blue. And it was, oh, hello, how are you? Wow, lovely to hear from you, la, la, la. And she asked me how I was. I said, I've got this dream. I want to make the longest table on earth, fashioned from a single English oak tree. And I said, I found the tree, but I just can't buy it. She actually said, how much do you need? Wow. So within 3 days, we had the money to buy the tree, and it was all delivered here. And then we've had a carpenter creating it. He's put his heart and soul into it, a beautiful young man. And so the crowdfunder will be to pay the carpenter, because we had the seed funding to actually buy the oak, which was a total miracle.
It's amazing. And this is the power, for people listening, of fairies and manifesting, because it's always for the highest good, isn't it, when you're working with fairies? And I've recently spoken to a guest who, she manifested her home, a couple of homes actually.
Really?
Yeah, she lives in America, and she just kept asking. She kept going to a tree every week, one of her trees that she connected with, and said, I own a cottage, it's on a horse farm, it's surrounded by a woodland. She did that for, actually it's about 2 years, and then someone phoned her, like you're saying, oh, there's a cottage for rent, it's near your children's school, it's on a horse farm, and it's surrounded by a forest.
That's just brilliant. That's just brilliant. Well, some of these trees have got names. So the one that's just a little bit, that largest one down that right-hand row of trees, he's called Gwydion. He's still 20 years old, but he's a great big beast compared to some of the others. Shooting up. Gwydion had some squirrel damage, but luckily he's got so much vigour in him that we cut out the dead wood that the squirrels had destroyed, and he's kind of filling himself in. So we'll just be a bit more eccentric. I think how I get my head around it is that we all carry our wounds, and we just makes us all more interesting.
Definitely.
We have to come to terms with them. I'm not saying that there's any justification in bad things that happen to people who don't deserve them, but I wouldn't be so disrespectful of the trauma that some people face as to say, oh, it was all for the highest good. That's not right, and it's not fair. But what I'm saying is, we can still find magic, whatever we might have suffered.
Yes.
And sometimes those who have suffered have a sensitivity. The fairies understand.
Definitely, that's what I'm finding with the people that I have spoken to on my podcast, that have, many of these people that connect with fairies have had a difficult journey, really difficult journey, but it's opened them up to, as well, it's opened them up to that magic that fairies bring. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can see here we have 3 flattened areas, and this is what we call the absinthe circle, because I had a crazy absinthe tent there when I had my 50th birthday. It was like a Parisian brothel, all purple and gold, and it was hilarious. And so, yes, there's a little horse, a little stone horse in the absinthe circle. I've not drunk absinthe in there since. Here we have our dancing meadow, which is a beautiful gathering place for prayer, ritual, sharing of conversation, just laughter, silliness, anything that we feel like. Now, this is an interesting one. This little tree here is a lilac tree. Now, I actually thought, I want a white lilac, I was thinking, just by my dancing meadow. So I said to my partner, I'd love a white lilac. He said, you don't want a white lilac, it's a wood. And I thought, I can have a white lilac if I want to. I love him, he's wonderful, but he's just like practical. And so I didn't do anything and didn't plant my white lilac, and one grew there anyway, self-seeded. Must have been dropped by a bird.
There you go, the fairies wanted it.
Yeah, they did, that's what I thought. They told me, and then because I was too much of a wuss to stand my ground, they planted one for me anyway, because they're my friends. They're my friends. So silly and so fun. little performance space. So this little hollow that we're just coming up to, it's a dip in the landscape, and it was originally about 120 years ago. It was where the land was dug away to see if there was any chance of tin being here. So just towards the end of tin mining on Dartmoor. And for ages I thought, what can I do with this fascinating drop in the land? And then one day it popped into my head, oh, it'll be an amphitheatre. So this will be a performance stage down there. And we've done the earthworks, as you can see, and then we're going to we'll just walk along where there will be benches for people to sit on, and then there's a row behind which will be for people to bring chairs, because not everyone can sit on a bench. They might want to bring their own chair and wrap themselves up warm. But that's a project for downstream, because the first priority is getting the table, the money raised for the table, and that finished off. But it will be a lovely thing.
Some hawthorn.
I know.
Oh, look at this. Wow. Beautiful maple.
It's a real little personality, this one.
Yes, I love all the little tufts of moss.
I know.
On the branches.
That's so Dartmoor, to have the moss and the lichens dripping off the trees.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
And there's some spindle trees here, which are absolutely beautiful. It's called a spindle tree because the wood is so hard that it was used to make spindles for spinning wheels.
Oh, I didn't realise that. I put some of those in my hedge at home.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Is that squirrels or baby?
No, it's a little bird.
Little birds.
So this is an amazing, in the hedgerow there, a former coppiced ash tree, which is doing really well considering so many trees are suffering from ash dieback.
Yes.
And I call him Arthur the ash, and he's having loads of babies, so I'm just hoping that look, here's one of his babies, this one here.
Look. Oh, yeah.
And I'm just hoping that some of them will be resilient to the terrible ash dieback, which is wiping out up to 98% of all ash trees.
That's amazing. So that whole sort of
Yes, you
row.
can see it's quite remarkable.
Yes, it is.
Do you want to take a photo of that, Ethan?
Yeah.
So just go through. If you've you've got bare no. Actually, you might get stung. It's that tree through there.
Looks like a little entrance as well. It's like a doorway, isn't
I
it?
know, it's really rather magical. It's got a very special presence, that tree.
Thanks, Ethan.
Oh, maybe you could do it from here.
So it's several trunks.
Yes, it'll be one tree. So back a long time ago, this old hedgerow would have been coppiced. That means just cut back. And it's all grown up. All the trunks have grown up together from where it was once cut. It's a wonderful tree, and it really does feel like there's a little portal in there. You can see those little dark places.
Wonder who lives in
Another amazing bit of ancient hedgerow there. I saw a wonderful, huge grass snake there once. So we're now at the part of the wood that we call the Narrows. So the whole wood is like a big diamond shape with a little finger sticking out the top, and so far we've been in the little finger, so we're now going out of that into the main hidden valley that is Pigwigan Wood, and you'll feel the energy shift as you go. There's another little camp there which belongs to my son, who has these amazing Thrive in the Woods classes where people can come and just spend a weekend in the woods. learning all sorts of things: fire by friction, Stone Age pottery, firing in open fires, bread baking in the open fire, and that sort of thing. Or they can just sit and hang out in the woods with amazing food.
Yeah.
Foraged things, cocktails with elderflower. The whole wood is called Pigwiggan Wood, but we're just about to go through the Narrows into this hidden valley, which is the main part of Pigwiggan Wood. There's a little self-seeded rowan tree here that I'm rather fond of. It survived that very, very dry summer 3 years ago when there was no rain for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I think, okay, you obviously want to be there. I shall let you stay.
It's so good to see baby trees, isn't it?
I know, it's so lovely. So as we go through here, it just starts feeling older and more magical.
I can see some kind of creature staring out at me there from that broken piece of trunk. Oh look, there's an eternity symbol on that tree. Has that been...
No,
Is that
it's
just
not been carved.
That's
It's just
natural.
And then up there's a wonderful big mossy boulder, and there's a multitude of trunks growing out, and we call that our wishing tree.
Oh, look.
So in usually about the time of Imbolc, beginning of February, we tie little brown paper and string, so it's all biodegradable, little wishes up there, and they always come true. It's magic on the wishing tree.
This is very magical. I was just saying to EJ that I discovered her beautiful work with the harp in connection to fairies through a documentary film that was made around 2001, I think it was, by a Canadian filmmaker called John Walker.
He was absolutely lovely man. So the film is actually called The Fairy Face. And John Walker, documentary maker in Canada, he had made an extremely successful documentary about some of the Inuit people in Alaska, and his backers who funded his film said, "Oh, you did so well with that, won so many awards, it's such a great film, you can make your next film about whatever you want and we'll fund it." And he said, "I want to make a film about fairies." And literally, he said their faces just as if they fell through the floor. And he had an Irish grandmother who was always telling him about the fairies, and he'd been to Ireland. He just wanted to investigate more. And for those of your listeners who know about the film, it's a wonderful exploration and talking to different people who work with the fairies. And he came to me because of some lovely work I did researching Victorian harp music, all about fairies. As many of you know, the Victorians had an absolute fascination with fairies. So we're not talking about the pretty little Edwardian nursery. This predates that. These were the real spirits of nature, and it was a confluence of many different factors in society. So there was a breakdown of the old rural ways of life. There was the awakening of interest in other religions from the Far East and such places that people had never really become aware of before. And there was the Fox sisters initiating spiritualism, but initiating spiritualism in the 1830s. And it was very fashionable, tea and table tapping, connecting the spirits. It would just be something that all Victorian people did. And the harp, which was the drawing room instrument of the 19th century, it was inevitable that the leading harpists and performers of the day would write music for the harp. Also because the harp has its own very, very strong connections with fairy. So where fairies might entice with their fascination through dancing, if they're not doing that, it's through music and usually the harp. There is something about the sound of the harp which really seems to thin the veil. And I come up with a harp and play here often, probably at least once a week, bring a little harp up here and play just for fun, because I love connecting with nature through the harp music. But I have a friend who is very in tune with the particular energies in this area, and she says there's a great sweep of an energy line that comes right across the other side of our valley here. So that's the east side. We're currently in the west side of the valley. There's a little stream runs down the middle. She said there's a great energy line that runs through there, and there is a beautiful style we'll come to soon, which goes back to very ancient times, and along the top a very ancient bridle track, and it's called the Black Prince's Path. I was here with a friend once, and she went up there for a walk. She came back, she said, I just saw a black rider on that bridle path along the top, and I thought, you've been watching Lord of the Rings too much, just like you're imagining it. But she did not know it was called the Black Prince's Path. But she saw a black rider up there. I was a bit freaky. I know.
I've got chills going up and down my legs.
And also our previous vicar here in Chagford, he said to me one day, you've got a holy well on your land. I found it on an old map. And I said, I know my land so well, I've never seen anything. He said, no, it is definitely on your land. And I said, show me the map. Well, he moved away before he could do that. But I love the thought. And I need to do more research to find that out, because it all helps tie in. So, for example, with this ancient hawthorn, which was traditionally planted near holy wells. And but where it is under the undergrowth, who knows?
Let me have a look for you, because something I do as part of my fairy work.
Oh, okay.
When I speak with people, if they say, I don't know the history of the place, there's lots of old maps online. I mean, I could do that, or I could send you the links. So I could have a look for you.
I have looked online, because there are quite some old maps, high definition ones by the local history society. This was just a map he found in the rectory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not an online map, but thank you for that offer.
Yeah.
So look, the sun's starting to come out.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
When I first had the wood, I thought, how do you decide which trees you need to thin? How do you just say, right, I'm killing you off? The trees decide for themselves. I don't ever need to worry. Look at this one. He will have said, okay, guys, I'm going to back out here. I'll become a home for beetles. And they just make their choices between them, and it's always perfect.
Wow, that's really moving.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, caught up. This tree doesn't want to let me go.
Just there by that little interesting tree stump, I'd be very interested to see if you sense anything. If you go just past that, there's a little vista into the stream. If you wanted to do your... Yes, go and have a look. I'd be so interested.
I can hear the stream already. That's like a work of art, isn't it?
It's so beautiful. So beautiful.
Oh, I'm getting a feeling in my...
I'll just be quiet a bit whilst you see if you can sense anything. You can go down a little closer if you like.
Oh wow, beautiful mushroom here. So I'm stood by this little stream, which you can hear in the background. So yeah, the mushroom here. Isn't that lovely?
Oh, how beautiful!
So I'm feeling goosebumps up and down my legs when I'm stood there. It feels like I'm seeing some little beings sat looking over into the stream.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they're sat on the edge there, swinging their legs, enjoying being near that little waterfall.
Oh, yes, in the summer, yes.
Yeah.
Enjoying the sun, which is just starting to come out. That's interesting because quite a few people have sensed a presence there.
Yeah, it's quite a happy presence.
Yeah, it's a happy presence, yes, exactly.
Yeah, they're enjoying it. So I
Yes.
think there's one main, I want to say pixie, and there's others with him. Yeah.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
Because others have got a much more sense of a naiad, like a female water spirit there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Ah,
But that's in a different
connection.
season, that's in winter.
okay.
And everything changes, of course, through the seasons. The stream
Yeah.
is much more abundant in the winter.
Yeah.
It's just a little trickle now.
Yeah. No, there's a few of them. I think
Yeah.
there's all different types, but that's what because I feel a connection more with the earthy fairies.
Yes. Yes, than
Yeah.
the water fairies. That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Mm,
Yes, but there's definitely something there.
definitely, yeah. A joyful spot.
Yes, it is a joyful spot. So I love all this. This is very ancient hedgerow, and it's just like an Arthur Rackham painting.
Oh my gosh. That stump, I quite often see these stumps that look like gnomes or pixies. Look at him. Have you seen them? This is like a gnome with a little hat and a beard.
There's an incredibly ancient style, and that is a numinous place. It's a place where the veil seems very thin, and I'd be really interested to see what you sense when we get there shortly. We'll just carry on along this path by the stream.
We're walking along a path that's through the wood, but it's right by this little stream, and there's a whole tangle of hazel, and there's lots of little mossy tree stumps that look like little fairy people looking out at us. It'd be amazing to draw. Oh, that's another one there. And so EJ was just saying she's taking us up to a special style that opens out onto an ancient pathway.
Along here we have 3 very ancient sycamores, and I call them the 3 weird sisters. There's a lovely Welsh folk tale about a sycamore, and it tells the story of a young Welsh lad, Siôn, and he is out early one morning and he hears the most enchanted singing coming from a tree. So he thinks, oh, that's really lovely, and he sits down to listen, and he thinks it might be a bird, but it's just completely enchanted singing. He's never heard anything like it coming from this tree, and he listens till it goes, and then when he gets up, he sees that the tree is all withered and ancient and dead. He thinks that's a bit weird, so he goes home, and his house looks different. It's covered in ivy, and there's an old man standing at the door, and Siôn says, "What are you doing in my house?" And this old man says, "What do you mean? This is my house." And it turns out that the old man is Siôn's nephew. The old man says, "Oh, you Siôn, you've come home. My grandfather was always talking about you. We were trying always to find where you had gone, but you disappeared when you were a boy." And my father, who would have been the brother of Siôn's father, my father was always talking about you. Grandfather never recovered from your loss. And so he just slipped through Siôn had slipped through a time slip into fairy by hearing this enchanting music. And the local wise woman had said at the time of his disappearance, he has been taken by the fairies and he will not come back until all the sap has dried up in that old sycamore tree.
Oh my goodness.
It's a great tale, isn't it?
It's a great tale. And I'm intrigued by the name, Shaun. How are you spelling that? Is it like Shaun? Or is it
Shoune, I think.
Shaun?
I can send that to you.
Yeah.
It's from a 19th century book on Welsh folklore that I've got. But
Fantastic.
look at this. Look, this is one of the three Weird Sisters. Just look at the ivy climbing up and the magic of her. She's such an old girl. Just don't sit down under her
No.
if you hear some enchanted music.
Well, I've heard enchanted music and I've recorded enchanted music on one of these episodes actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I was recording with Jo Hickey Hall a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and she came down to Dartmoor and we went to an old barn at Emsworthy where the bluebells are every spring. We were sat on this old ruined wall outside the barn talking, and she'd been saying, "Oh, it's so enchanting, isn't it, Claire?" And was really praising this little ruined barn, the Red Roof Barn. And so we sat on this wall, just getting comfortable, and I caught this snippet of a woman humming. It's like she was singing a wordless song. Something like in the background.
Wow.
Yeah, just as we were talking. But the thing was that earlier on that day, on the way to this place, we'd been sat on a rock, and a man walked by that I vaguely know, just in passing, and he said, "I can smell woman's perfume." And neither of us were wearing perfume. So I'm wondering who this spirit was that was following us, whether she was a fairy.
How
or
interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
So this is the Pigwidden style.
Oh, is it? Oh, look at this.
Here.
Oh, here. Oh, look at that. Oh my gosh. Oh, yes.
So this is a very, very ancient footpath here. It's exactly due east of Scorrel Circle,
Wow.
which is one of the best stone circles up on Dartmoor, an absolute nexus of energy lines.
Look at this. And this is the footpath that is called the Black Prince Way, is that right?
No, it's along the top.
Ah,
It's
right.
the
It's
Black Prince Way.
further
But
up.
this is a very old footpath that comes down from the Black Prince's Way, which is a bridle track that runs across the top of the ridge. So this is all Pigwidden wood up here as well, but this is all old woodland, as you can see.
Yes. So, EJ, do you want to describe what we're looking at for people that can't, because we're stood here going, "Oh, isn't this lovely?" So for people that can't see this, and I will take photos and put them on my website, on my blog. Yeah.
Well, we're seeing it at the moment in August, when the stream is pretty much at its lowest and the bluebells have all gone. There's some ferns and there's an amazing very old oak tree to the right and a sycamore to the left. And those two trees really feel like a portal with these ancient granite standing stones either side of this tumble of old granite rocks. So, as I say, it's a very ancient trackway, and you go on up here, the path takes you up to the top of the wood, where there is a very old holly with fantastic faces in it, and beyond that, where the wood ends, there's an ancient bridle track called the Black Prince's Path.
And that's the one that's supposedly haunted by the Black Rider. Is that right? Is there a story? Or?
Well, I don't know the story, but all I know is that a friend of mine who was visiting the wood one day went off for a walk, and she walked up to the ridge And when she came back ashen-faced, she said she'd seen a black rider along that path, but she did not know the name of the path, that it was called the Black Princess Path. Had no idea. So I thought that was a very curious thing.
Yeah, and it's what the style looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. For anyone that's watched those films, it could have been, I mean, Alan Lee could have designed this, couldn't he?
Yes, he really could. And in fact, he's come and drawn it a few times.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, it's a favourite spot for many of the people here, and accessible along a footpath that enters the wood further up. But I just love it. It's really nice to share. I bought the wood to share. It's not something I want to enclose. I really believe in opening up nature to everybody.
And there's an eye. It looks like a dragon's eye.
Yes,
there,
doesn't it just?
Yeah, amazing. And little doorways.
Yes.
Wow.
And then just beyond here is just very mossy, very damp, and that's a really, really rare habitat.
And is that protected woodland or?
It's not protected except by me. I protect it, but it's not. Although it's got the whole feel of Wistman's wood, it's not sealed off to the public.
There's some very happy little mossy faces I can see looking out over there. In the
Yes,
distance from those boulders, like little, like chubby, happy faces. That's what I'm seeing.
I go up there sometimes and just sit. There's a lovely boulder and various places, and it's really succulent and luscious up there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me to speak on your podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to take you on a tour of Pigwigan Wood. Thank you, Claire. So here we are back sitting at the glorious oak table, and there's just one thing I think that sums up everything that I care about so passionately. And that is this sense of wanting that all of us need to be creating more magic in the world. So everything, all I've done, all my art, all my life, from playing the harp to making films to creating an enchanted woodland, has always been about a absolute sense of passion to just make the world a more magical place. Until we can love the world, we're not going to care much about saving it. People will only look after what they love. So teaching people to love the world and each other and the trees and all the non-human world, both the invisible and the visible world. All of that is just one thing. And I feel that's what I want to do. Just encourage all of us to work together to make the world a more magical place.